a massage thing for MGM Grand, so we'll go down there and play in.
This is just to receive the forms.
After May 3rd? Everybody knows where to turn in?
I'll go get
Oh, that's why Nancy's not home. She's here.
contracting, special goods and services provided by, yes, GPN government partners.
Riveting information.
The office.
Oh, yes.
In case somebody's running a segment from Joe's office. Oh, I'll send it to you then. We just took the officer that we fired for shooting. Yeah, Lattice was
I had a suggestion. I think I told
something like loose, but
you guys talked about it.
You didn't tell me. We talked about it earlier, but you didn't tell me you had a suggestion.
But anyway, he just sent us somewhere. I'll make sure it's early.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, April 25th to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Baker. Here. Galloway.
Here.
Lennon.
Here.
Piana. Here. And Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. We have a quorum. Our first order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Hearing none, a motion would be in order.
So moved to adopt the agenda in its entirety as presented.
Support.
Moved by Lennon, supported by Piana. Any other questions, comments about the agenda? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Baker.
Yes.
Galloway.
Yes.
Lennon.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item, the agenda is approved. Our first order of business this evening is two presentations. Our first one from the Downtown Development Authority. We have a couple of folks here representing the DDA this evening. Welcome. Good evening.
I was just here. I'm Chris Hughes from Communications and Marketing Manager for the Ferndale DDA, and I just wanted to introduce our speaker for the evening, who is a member of our board and a wonderful business owner, Michael Hennis, and he's going to take it away.
Thank you. Well, it's cafe season. Believe me. Even if the weather doesn't agree, cafes signal the change from winter to the spring and summer seasons. I love looking down the street and watching everyone setting up their cafes, putting out the tables and the chairs and the umbrellas and the flowers. It kind of ties the downtown together. When you extend the buildings with the cafes, you narrow the streets, you bring both sides closer together, and you make Ferndale more walkable. When you travel to other cities, when I do, you kind of gravitate to areas where you see clusters of cafes and outside dining. It kind of helps define the area or the community. This is the next slide. These are some of the cafes listed on this sheet have been around for years. Como's, the Wab, and House by You. I was told to make sure that I mentioned House by You. I think that's the second one here. And I have to thank Charlene.
Yes.
Your staff has made the release of renewal process painless. And it never used to be so.
We're trying. Thank you.
It was a struggle. You've made it just very efficient and
Good to hear.
quick. Thank you. The next slide. Although some of the businesses have left, we have a lot of great new businesses joining the downtown Ferndale family. And we have some businesses that have been moving and expanding. I've been to a couple of businesses on this list for the first time. Valentine Vodka, that's right behind the restaurant House by You. I think that's what.
That's two.
Yeah, okay. Right on Vester is the old pool table manufacturing building. I've watched them work on it for the last year. They've done almost all the work themselves. The room was beautiful. The vodka is terrific, and it's something you should check out. And the other new business I've been in is Rainy Day Hobbies. I found an old train set that was stuck in the attic for about 40 years. And Otto helped me get the train running, tested it all out, gave me this little clip that connected to the transformer, $3, and it was just fun talking to somebody who's passionate about what they do. And that's I came out of a big box store. Okay, I've done the math. These numbers are right here. There's $57,000. In the last 10 years, we've had $57,000 in reinvestment.
Million, actually.
57 million, excuse me. 1,244, that's an easier number for me. 1,244 net new jobs created. This is a terrific number, reducing the vacancy rate from 30% to less than 5%. And 17,647 volunteer hours. But have we included this one?
No.
17,648 hours. These are just some of the volunteer opportunities. These are some of the events that are coming up. Bicycle Night, the 93rd Ferndale Memorial Day Parade, Ferndale Pride, Pimp Your Pot. I love that one. It's another street event. The Live Green Fair, Fighter Does Ferndale. But there is events for the DDA and committees and projects that go on year-round. And they require all sorts of different skills and talents. And so it would be great if some of us can be more involved. The door's open.
I have a question.
Yes.
The Live Green Fair, that sounds like a new event.
That is.
Do you have any, can you give a teaser or an appetizer of what it is?
That is going to close down West 9 Mile from Woodward to Allen. Not that that's the most important part, but he's going to bring in everything that's green. Green food. Integrity Shows are going to be putting it on. It's going to be green clothing, green working, green living, green storage, green, everything green you can think of. And it should be a very interesting thing brought to us by a very excellent event organizer who brings all the components to the street at the right time. July 15th through the 17th.
Thank you.
And in case anybody doesn't know, Michael, you own...
How's by you?
Great. Thanks for being here. Great job. Thanks. Our next presentation this evening is from the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission, and they have the 2011 Green Business of the Year Award.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Douglas Christie with the FESC. And part of our Green Week celebration that concluded on Friday was to hand out the 2011 Ferndale Green Business of the Year Award. And this year, we would like to congratulate and recognize Garden Fresh Gourmet. And we have the Garden Fresh team with us this evening. I think Jack and Jack are going to come up if you'd like to come up to the stand. And we have an award to present with the mayor for all of your wonderful contributions to the city on your recycling, your composting, and all the other things that you guys do. So congratulations on that. And thank you. You guys got the award. Okay. Before I turn the mic back over to Jack, I wanted to say, too, that we have a wonderful video. They let us into their facility, onto their grounds last week, and Terry with a patch was there. So that'll be posted shortly on the patch, and I think, Jack, you might have it on your website, too, you said eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Yes. Well, thank you. I grew up in Ferndale, so we're real proud to have this award and to be able to do some of the things we get to do in the city. I just wanted to add, and I don't want to make this political, I have a lot of friends in this audience that are for and against the vote that's coming up. And I can see a lot of people are struggling and they can't afford this. But, I went to school with Mike Kitchen, the former police chief. He was our school president. And I had the clubhouse barbecue, and a lot of police officers ate at my place. And I remember the Oakland County sheriffs would always tell me, sometimes I'd have 11 police cars there. I used to tell them they were killing my business because none of the felons would ever come in. But they always, more than one, probably 4 or 5 different Oakland County sheriff deputies would always tell me that Ferndale had the best police force in all of Oakland County. And I believe them. I have a lot of friends on the Ferndale Police Force. And for that reason, there's people I worry about when they pull people over at night and they don't have backup. So it's something I personally, I have a business. It's going to cost me a lot of money. But, my friends, I think they're more important. I think we've had some officers on there a long time. And, their lives are at risk when they don't have backup. So I just wanted to put that in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe it was earlier this year, Garden Fresh became Ferndale's largest employer as well. So one of our great corporate citizens. Thanks so much for being here. Our next order of business is a public hearing, and I believe we have to call that to order and call roll for that? Madam Clerk, or just call it to order. Then I will hereby officially open the public hearing for the fiscal year 2012 City of Ferndale budget. And City Manager, are you going to introduce that item?
Well, just briefly, Jane Marie is here, who's really put together with the staff most of the information, or actually all of the information in terms of the budget. I just want to point out that this year the process is really 4 budgets. 2 for this year, actually 2 for this year and 2 for the upcoming, and then 2 for the following year, following the suggestion of the mayor that we've looked at that. And the second budget in each year is what happens if the millage were to pass, what happens if it doesn't. I would point out just in general summary that the proposed general fund budget for this year is down from 19.2 million to 17.4, just over the actuals in 2010. And the budget for all funds is roughly 40-some million, 44 million. That's all of the parking fund, the street funds, the capital improvement fund, the water fund, etc. I don't know if the finance director has anything else she'd like to add before the public speaks or not, or we're okay? Okay, right.
But to be clear, what we're doing here, Mr. City Manager, is receiving and reviewing the proposed tax rates.
Yes. The new forms that you have are the latest from Oakland County, who serves as our not just the assessor, but also equalization director, and they're responsible for the preparation of those forms. And we're here to take input on this. It is likely, by charter, we're required to adopt by the first Friday in May. It's likely that at least our suggestion is council will probably meet the Wednesday in May, I think that's the 4th, for the final budget session to firm up, and that will certainly be after the election the day before.
And so just to be clear for the public, the millage rate that we are adopting this evening would be the current rate as it exists now. If something happens on May 3rd in the election to change those rates, we would come back and amend this to change it to reflect the will of the people May 3rd. But for purposes of tonight, we are adopting the rates as they currently exist now and are in the packages. So at this point, I would open it up to the public to for any comments on our receiving and reviewing the proposed tax rates. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Any, oh,
Sorry, I'm just a little bit slow of foot.
that's okay.
Fast of mouth, but slow of foot.
Good evening.
In the back of this packet, the summary information, one of the second to the last page has the comparison of 2010 tax bills based on the average taxable value and tax rates. And this goes from about, looks like about 20 different communities or areas.
Katie, I'm not sure what you're looking at. What packet are you?
Is that the budget packet? Oh, that's
One
our
that's on the
budget.
back desk. It says summary information.
Something that the city manager's office put together is in the.
Okay. We don't have that up here on council table, but if you describe it for us, that would be
Got my
great.
budget, I've got it.
Section 1, page 14.
Yeah.
Okay. See, you get a bigger packet than I do.
Here. Katie, is it the comparison of average taxable values and
Yes.
tax rates for South
Yes.
Oakland County? Okay.
Yes. These are rates that are set by the county?
No.
No.
We report our rates to the county, and they
report your
publish
rates
them
to the county.
countywide.
So
Correct.
these are what we reported for the average tax bill for 2010.
What?
It says average tax bill per single family,
Yeah, that's just the
PRE,
math.
tax rate 210, 211.
Yes.
Okay. And I see that there is only about 4 or 5 cities that have a lower tax rate than Ferndale. And there's about 15 cities that have a higher tax rate.
Be careful about not the word rate, not rate, but bill,
Bill.
overall
Bill.
bill. That's correct.
Okay.
That's
So you have
correct.
something like Bingham Farms have over $8,000, and Huntington Woods is in the range of about $5,000, and we are an average tax bill of about $2,112.
That's correct.
And I think that, we've heard so much about the fact that we are overtaxed, and that our tax bills are the highest of, anybody in the southeast area. This obviously shows that it is not. And I just commend the fact that we have this information available to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who would like to address this public hearing? All right, now hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do we need to take a roll, Madam Clerk? Still no roll required, thank you. All right. Then a motion would be in order to receive the proposed tax rates?
I move to receive the levy as proposed on Forms L4029 and reviewed as part of the fiscal year ending 2012 budget process with a planned adoption date of Friday, May 6th.
Support.
Moved by Piana, supported by Galloway. Is there any further discussion or questions from council?
I did have one question, and I think it's fixed on the handout, but there was some numbers scratched off and handwritten in. Can you explain why?
Certainly. With unlimited tax general obligation bonds, or the bonds that were issued previously, we're required, the amount to be actually paid it varies a little bit from year to year, but the debt service allows the city to levy whatever millage times the value to generate the required dollars for that year. So that is up slightly. The second item that was crossed off is the Act, 359, and that goes up because it's capped at, the maximum that can be levied is $50,000. So with valuation going down, you levy a higher amount times the valuation to generate the $50,000.
Okay.
Jane Marie, did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold on.
The one other thing I might just say is that the sheet that was referred to a few moments ago, Jane Marie has collected the data from all of the communities in the county, and what you pay in taxes is of course the value of the taxable value of your home times the city's millage rate. And when you include all of the communities in Oakland County, we're still in the very bottom quarter for it, and that will be in the final budget document. We'll get those to council.
Further questions, comments from council? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Kiana?
Yes.
Baker? Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. Our next item on the agenda is our call to audience. Call to audience, of course, is up to 30 minutes now, and more time if needed at the end of the meeting before call to council. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. On any issue that is not on the agenda this evening, you will have an opportunity to comment on those items at that time. Please state your name and address so that our clerk may record the information. Our first speaker, Mr. House.
Would you like to note the time? Did you note the time?
Thank you very much. It is 7:48.
All right. I'd like to, I'd like to preface my words by a promise to Mike Lennon to keep my minutes below 3, so you shan't have to admonish me for it. I would like to address my words to the voters who are watching here tonight. My name is Sean House, and I represent the council, or the Ferndale Against Council's Tax, or FACT. We have been working to make sure our tax rates don't get out of hand. And I caution you to be careful when you talk about average taxes being the lowest in the area. Make sure that you understand that that's balanced at the value of our homes. So you have higher taxes in more affluent areas, and that's just a natural thing. So when you hear things like we're in the bottom 1/4 of the county, it's because we're probably in the bottom 1/4 of the taxable value here in the county. The city council has the ability to control only a portion of the millage rate, and they are asking for a 38% increase in that millage rate that they are able to control. They're not able to control the county portion or the school taxes or anything else. So I urge you to vote carefully and find out for yourself what your own value is and what this is going to cost you over a 5-year period. And I also urge you to remember, when they talk about an expiration date, please remember how often that any tax is expired in the city of Ferndale, as long as you can remember. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm David Leonard. I have maybe 3 companies here in Ferndale. We're at 3101 Bermuda. We're at 620 Woodward Heights and 450 Fair Street. And I share the views of Jack Aronson as far as our police and fire department goes. They are the best. But every year these things come up, they're the first ones to get threatened. Our own business, over the last year and a half, we lost 1/3 of our business. We can't go to our customers and say, we're going to raise your prices and give you less service. We have to find other cuts. And we are having to do that. And I'm just saying, I don't think you've looked deep enough, far enough. The police and fire have long been here before the Coolidge Center, have long been here before the DDA. So to me, you know, if you want to talk seniority, and really your biggest responsibility is the safety and security of our community. And yet that's what you threaten us with every time you get a little budget twinge. So that's a reason I'm opposing the taxes. And also we're struggling, and we're watching what we have to spend. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, Mary.
Good evening. My name is Mary Schusterbauer, 2634 Highland, and I'm here tonight with a few thank yous. First, I want to say thank you to the City Council for tackling a tough issue in a really responsible way. I think that you were brilliant in appointing a financial planning committee to tear apart the city budget and look for every cut and every collaboration and make a recommendation to you. You used citizens of our community, their expertise and their experience. It was just a great move to appoint that committee. And I want to thank all 12 members of that committee who spent 14 weeks at this task. It wasn't something they took lightly. And then I want to extend my thank yous to every city department that has already taken cuts, and all of the creative thinking that's been going on already with reorganizing City Hall, use of new software, cross-training. There are many, many things that have already gone on, and I think everybody needs to understand that this isn't something, the millage increase is not something that was put on the ballot in a vacuum. We can't cut our way to a solution. And I know also we can't just tax our way to a solution. We have to combine creative thinking with collaboration and reductions, but also the millage increase. And we can't do it with one or two more spaghetti dinners. We have to vote yes on May 3rd. I'm voting on May 3rd to protect the investment that I've already made in this community. I don't want to see my investment go down the drain. And so I want this to stay a safe and vibrant community, and I'm voting yes. And I urge the other citizens of the community to do the same. Thank you for listening this evening.
Thanks, Mary. Good evening, Keith.
Hi, everybody. Keith Dalton. I'd like to just support Mary in what she said. But also, my wife and I do not want to pay more, but we have been in Ferndale 20-plus years. We plan on staying here until our end. We reluctantly support the override and wish there was another course of action, but a simple investigation shows that our elected officials have acted responsibly and have cut and done what they could do, and now we need to raise revenue. Truthfully, I see no other way. This is the real world, and unlike some hope, there is no free ride. We as citizens and adults must provide ourselves. I hear some saying all the time that taxes are too high, but in truth, most of us overall are paying the lowest percentage in local, state, and federal taxes since the 60s. Even if you believe that corporate America has your back and loves you, and you're sure your elected government is out to screw you, please, no matter your disdain for our government, this is not the time to take it out and penalize your own family, friends, and city. Voting no is self-defeating and destructive to all your neighbors and your own personal health and well-being. Voting no, then change your mind and realize you miss all the services we now have. Sorry, Charlie, no, there's no do-over. Our city government is you, me, and our children, not some abstract boogeyman. I want my streets clean and plowed. I stood against the 3 wars then and now. I want the seniors who require it provided for. I need no subsidies for oil companies with billions. I want police, fire, and DPW services second to none. I did not need or want a Wall Street bailout. Our national, state, and local debt is not our Ferndale's making. It is from corporate and personal greed and will not be corrected if Ferndale fails or defaults. We have what we have in America today because prior American generations paid and did what it took to provide for future American generations. Was it easy? Did they like it? Was it cheap? The answer to all 3, I'm sure, is no. But they did it because it was the right thing to do, and they knew it was required to advance the nation and society forward to protect the health and well-being of its citizenry. And it's our time now to step up and do the same thing in this time of our city's need. And it's not a pleasant task, but sacrifice is what sacrifice is. I watch the big wide world. I'm almost done.
Okay.
The big wide world nowadays, is sacrifice means only, do I supersize my order or do I get a 130-inch screen TV instead of a 70? And I would hope that we see that sacrifice might mean we need to pay a little more for police, fire, and other things, because I know you guys have done your job. And one last thing real quick, I'm going to get a new disc to Dell, but the Saturday the Saturday Forum, everybody, is on cable soon and web on all the different websites.
Thank you, Keith.
Sean's website and everything.
Thank you, Keith. Good evening, Sherry.
Good evening. Sherry Wells. Since about August, I have attended DDA board meetings, and lately I've been working with various DDA committees. Last month, I attended all 4 sessions of the 2-day Main Street workshops, to which our DDA, staff, and volunteers, and other such organizations were invited. My goal with the DDA is to contribute to the downtown remaining vibrant, but not vibrating, and to work towards having an optimal relationship between businesses and all Ferndale residents. We've reported to you about some residents who don't live next to downtown, but who told us they don't go downtown anymore because they don't think there's anything there for them, or because it's too noisy at many times of day. The gasoline prices may have one side benefit. I complimented a Coors truck driver this morning who was unloading at Rosie's because he turned his truck off. That rumbles through the streets as well, and I've been awakened by that. And he said that he's been under orders to turn the trucks off if it's going to be more than a couple of minutes, and there's actually a cutoff. That's good news for at least the Coors drivers. So because of my participation with the DDA, I know that it received a draft of the proposed noise ordinance recently. I know of no residents who received a draft. And we are the ones who have been living with the excess noise and vibration year-round for nearly 2 years now. I have been trying to get a copy of that draft for us with no success. As you know, our best time to get petition signatures, if we have to go through that again, will be Election Day next week. We need to assure ourselves that the consultants that we, as the city, have hired have recommended something that we can live with, and strongly enough that a reasonable ordinance will get adopted. I know the council's been very busy this half year since the consultant was hired. I also know it has been 6 more months of sleep deprivation and reduced enjoyment in the use of dozens of our homes, even with the patios being closed for this long winter. How do I get a copy of that draft and of the responses submitted to it this week?
I'm looking at the DDA folks. I don't know if the DDA has a response for you. Obviously, it's not something that we have at council.
I think she's talking about the, looking at the consultant recommendations. And due to the budget meetings and other priorities, and illnesses and vacations, it's been difficult to bring the small group together to come up with, bring it back to council. So I think it would, if we set expectations, that would probably come back to council after the May 3rd millage. I think that would probably be reasonable. So is that what you're asking about?
I'm asking to see a copy of that recommendation at least.
They're not recommendations as yet. They are...
Then what did the DDA review about the noise ordinance? It was on their agenda. And report.
I'm not sure, but I suspect it was suggestions and from the consultant, but as in terms of formal recommendations to council, that is not where that document is ready.
Well, I'd like to see the suggestions, and if the DDA can review it, then we neighbors ought to be able to review it.
The board of directors hasn't reviewed anything, so this is something that we can address between Christina. I know what you're looking for, but what you're looking for is not ready yet.
But it at least leads us to know what direction it's going as to whether or not we're out
Sherry,
there
I
with
will
petitions
instruct the
on
city
people.
manager's office to find out if there was a document shared with the DDA relative to our consultant. We know that they weren't recommendations, and if there was, we will share them with you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening.
Hello, Mary Frederickson University. I wasn't really angry until just a few minutes ago. I am with FACT and with Sean and all of us against any Headley override, a no vote. But now I am angry and I'm very upset with you as a city council. One of the things that has always been said here, that there are to be no attacks on anyone by the city council or by any of the audience when there is call to audience. You allowed this gentleman at the opening of his speech to say sarcastic things about anybody who would vote no for this Headley override. Why did you let that happen? I didn't get up here to do that, and you did, sir.
Now you're addressing him, and he did not make a personal attack. He made a general statement, and so he was not attacking an individual, which you are beginning to do, so
but
please
we are not
continue.
here to attack. We are
Absolutely.
here to say we are against the Headley override. We're not saying, well, if you vote yes, you're this and you're that. We're not doing that. But that made me angry. First time I have become angry. One of the things I do want to address is the fire insurance. I have called my insurance agent 3 times in 1 week. She told me we should not need to worry about any increase in our fire insurance if we are 5 miles within a fire station and 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant. She says for your insurance to go up substantially, you would almost have to live within a rural area. She said if there's any problem with that, she would fax it over to me. Also, Mr. Coulter, you said we could go online for our taxes. I did go online for my taxes, and it was interesting. Thank you for the information, because it was incorrect. My taxes were incorrect.
Well, you better make sure you're paying the right amount then.
They
because that's
were
what you're being
paid.
billed.
They were paid, but it was marked, I was in the red and owed the city or the county tax money. It said to call the county. I ended up calling the office here. As soon as I said, hey, I'm looking, he said, did you go online? I said, yes, I did. He says, well, that's not all correct.
Nope. Good to know.
So people could go online and might find something if they're not knowledgeable, like I did, but then, who are knowledgeable and find something that would be incorrect. But people could go online and who are not knowledgeable and not know the difference.
So, your 3 minutes.
Also, this weekend, I'm sure there's a lot of information going out, and I wouldn't believe everything that might be coming in the mail. And I am retired, and I am voting no, or I should say have voted no against the Headley Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, welcome back.
Hello, Council again. Douglas Christie, Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission, and I am up here this time quickly because I know we have a lot of people waiting to thank the City of Ferndale and also the community with coming out to the 3rd annual Ferndale Green Week. And I'd like to put a special thank you out to the following. The Ferndale DDA, the Ferndale Public Library, the Colic Community Center, the Ferndale Beautification Commission, the Sierra Club Southwest Michigan Group, along with the Green Cruise, the Woodward Avenue Brewery, the WAB, and the Loving Touch, Downtown Ferndale Bike Shop, the Night Move, Handmade Detroit, Bachensky Whistler Architects, Green Daffodil Studio, Green Thumb Gardening Center, Mr. Rain Barrel, Greenleaf Bodywork, Cacao Tree Cafe and Season Cafe, Western Market, Garden Fresh Gourmet, Zucana Sushi Lounge, Treat Dreams, the singer Joe Riley, and our communication in the area, Ferndale Friends, Ferndale Patch, the Ferndale 115, and the Woodward Talk. So thank you. They all helped support our green event, and we look forward to having it again next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Shuffett. Last December, I stood here to tell everyone how amazing the Ferndale Police Department were when they caught and arrested the 2 men who robbed and shot at my husband in front of our house on November 20th. I'm here again to tell everyone how lucky the Ferndale residents are to have a police department that truly care about their residents. After the 2 suspects were arrested, we received some strange phone calls, and on one day a strange homeless-type guy showed up at our house trying to talk to my husband about the case. When we notified the police, not only did they immediately follow up on the situations, but they took our concerns seriously and told us to call them if anything seemed suspicious. They patrolled our block often and truly made us feel safe, because once you're a victim of a crime, you begin to live in fear. The police also did their job so thoroughly in collecting evidence that both criminals pleaded guilty without going to trial, saving my husband from having to testify and relive the nightmare. On April 14th, both criminals were sentenced and are now in prison. I want to publicly thank the Ferndale Police Department, and I want all of the Ferndale residents to know how fortunate we are to have a police department that not only protect the residents, but care about them. My husband and I are proud to have a police department that we can brag about. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening. My name is Dan Martin. I'm at 1447 West Hazelhurst, and I totally agree with the comments of the last speaker. We do have a great police department and a great fire department, and that in part is the reason that I am voting yes on May 3rd for the Headley override, and I encourage all the voters and residents of the city to do the same. When we look at economic recovery in the city, we need a city with a walkable downtown, with good parks, with community services that are available, and efficient and effective city services. I applaud and believe in the work that the City Financial Commission did. The residents put in a ton of time there and really had a great output. I appreciate all the work council has done on this over the past year and the difficult decisions and issues that had to have been addressed in order to take a look at and tackle this really tough financial situation that a lot of cities are in. I encourage everyone to vote yes on May 3rd. I believe in this city. I know the residents of this city believe in it, and we should come together and vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, Kay.
Kay Watson. First of all, we do have a great police and fire department, and I'd like to see them that way. Basically, that's council's main job, is to see that they're provided for to protect our community. This should be the last thing to be cut. There are other things that can be cut. We need to stop some of our exorbitant spending. We can dream dreams, but until we have the money, we shouldn't continue to do so with matching grants. As far as a walkable community, the way gas prices are going, we may all be walking. Also, I'd like to ask you if it's on the books, a law that keeps you from putting signs on your property, whether you have a building on it or not.
Yes, that is in violation of city ordinances.
There is an ordinance?
Political and expressive signs can only be placed on property that contains an occupied structure.
Okay, how about signs that you might say are illegal?
What type of illegal signs?
We've had elections where signs have appeared on property where nobody lives, but they weren't removed.
If my office was made aware of it, then I made sure they were removed.
There were a lot of them, but it wasn't the past council that did this. They left it, but there's a new one now that's making a fuss about doing it, and I think we can do better things with our police than send them out for petty perks of what you don't like. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Good evening, sir.
Al Richards, Horton Street. Been a resident since 1959. I am dead set against this increase. It seems like the battle cry of the cities now, and not only Ferndale, but all the cities around here, is when they want to increase, we're going to lay off firemen and policemen. I don't understand that. It sounds to me like the old thing when we used to try to, before the Hadley, to get a school tax passed, we're going to cut out sports and music. Well, everybody had somebody in sports and music, and the people would vote for the darn villages, okay? Now we're going to cut out firemen and policemen. I think before you cut any firemen or policemen, you ought to try to cut some of the other places around here. I spoke to the city manager a while back about a couple of things I observed. The one thing, I was in here to get an absentee ballot for my wife, and that particular morning I had received a calendar in the mail from Ferndale. They printed up calendars. If you want to cut things, start cutting the little things. Let's cut it to the bone before you lay off a fireman or a policeman. They sent out all these calendars. The other thing I observed is I live close to Harding Park. During the big snowstorms, we had people over there plowing the parking lots for Harding Park. What's that got to do with anything? Nobody uses the park in the wintertime. You don't need to plow the parks. It's weird. If you want to do something, start cutting things. This ain't going to sound good, but you got a big old white elephant over here that we built, this library. Before you lay off one fireman or policeman, close that thing down until we can afford to reopen it, okay? The city hall, I understand we run this here 4 days a week. Run it 2 days a week. I ain't never seen no line in there, and I don't care if there was a line out the door and clear down to Woodward. If you want to have some business, you want to pay something, put a stamp on it and get it in there. This is a bunch of bull. Cut it. Let's cut it to the bone. Cut it. But don't lay off no firemen or policemen. That's a bunch of bull. I just read in the paper you bought a new fire truck to replace one that we haven't used in 2 or 3 years, okay? That tells me you didn't need it in the first place. But you bought one so darn big, it won't even fit in the firehouse. Now you got to remodel the firehouse, along with the library and the city hall and everything else. Where's that coming from? Who's doing this stuff? You don't even have to buy a fire truck that won't even fit in the firehouse, and evidently we didn't need it. We didn't need it. We were doing just fine without it. And I know it was on grants and stuff, but the city had to match some of that money. So, yeah, I'm against it. If you want to lay off a fireman or a policeman, and they should be with us. They should be with the citizens, because we're with them, okay? And take and cut some of the stuff out. Close that library down. Run this city hall 2 days a week. Do that kind of stuff, and let's see what happens, eh? Then get around to your cutting a policeman or fireman.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Good evening, Ann.
Good evening, everyone. Ann Heller, 1024 Leroy, speaking as the president of Fern Care Free Clinic. And this is just a gentle reminder. We have our annual dinner Thursday, May 5. This time we're going to be at the Ukrainian Cultural Center over on Ryan in Warren, leaving Royal Oak Elks. And I'm happy to tell you, leaving Royal Oak Elks because it's too small. We had to go to a larger venue. So I want to remind everybody, please come. The money that we raise at the dinner goes to our patients, and to finish 459, the permanent site. As I said, the last time I was up here, we saw in the first 6 months 151 patients. Since then, it has increased to 170 patients that we see, and now we have just under 500 visits under our belt. We're currently at the Kulik Community Center. It would be nice to be in our permanent place, but please come to the dinner on the 5th. L. Brooks Patterson is our speaker to talk about health in Oakland County that we need to address. And Craig Covey, former mayor, is the master of ceremonies for this event. So please come to the dinner. Thank you. Tickets are on PayPal, and just go to www.ferncare.org. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Good evening, Brianna.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Hi, my name is Brianna Fritz. I live at 455 West Marshall. I first wanted to thank City Council, City staff, and the Financial Planning Committee for all the work they've put into the budget process this year. I know these people have spent countless hours and days and weeks and months working to develop a budget that best serves our community, and they're truly committed to Ferndale and its future, so thank you. I moved to Ferndale a year and a half ago from Ann Arbor. I knew I needed to move to Metro Detroit, to the area for work, but I really had my pick of cities. Detroit, Ferndale, Birmingham, and Royal Oak were up for consideration, just to name a few. But after extensive research on my part, I finally decided that Ferndale was a community I wanted to make my home, and I'm so glad that I did. I love the restaurants and the bakeries, the shops and the boutiques, the walkability of downtown, and our many community events. As a runner, I appreciate the well-maintained sidewalks and the work of our police department in keeping pedestrians safe. It is for all of these reasons that I'm voting yes for the millage that will be on our May 3rd ballot. I know fiscal times are tough, and even with the passage of the millage, council will still need to make some tough cuts. But if our community comes together to pass the millage on May 3rd, we can help curb drastic cuts to public safety and community development projects that bring new business and people to our city. I know many of my neighbors also want Ferndale to retain its high level of service and safety, and so I'm encouraging all my friends and all my neighbors to join me in voting yes on May 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg, good evening.
I have a strong 3 minutes. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Greg Pollica, Ferndale resident. I come tonight to encourage residents to vote yes in next week's election. A yes vote is a vote to protect police, fire, and ambulance services. A yes vote will save Ferndale's future. For 16 weeks last fall and winter, the Financial Planning Committee met to research, develop a proposal to help Ferndale out of a financial crisis. The same kind of crisis that is repeated in most cities across Michigan and across the country. The committee was represented by at least one resident from every voting precinct, as well as Ferndale business owners. These hardworking, everyday people came from a variety of social economic backgrounds and political persuasions. The report this committee presented to council included a series of cuts to various departments, some changes in how business is conducted, and a short-term moderate millage increase. The details of this 40-page report can be found on the city's website. The opposition is encouraging you to vote no next week. Their claim is that Ferndale isn't in the dire straits that it has been talked about by experts for months. They also claim that the city could weather the $2.3 million shortfall this year and the expected $16 million shortfall over the next 5 years by doing some interesting changes, such as having police officers use their own vehicles for doing their job, or forcing residents to volunteer mowing the grasses in the parks and perform the cleanup duties across the city. I'm not sure how you force someone to volunteer. They also suggest that we can raise money for the police and fire departments by holding a fundraiser. I would be impressed by a $2 million spaghetti dinner. Even the Dream Cruise, which is Ferndale's largest event, only profits about $50,000 a year for the city. Now, their opposition will tell you in their two-page report is changes that could be made. There are more changes that could be made, but that the city has been stalling on getting information to them for them to be able to provide more ideas. That is a lie. I have been fortunate enough to have obtained a copy of some of these communications between the city clerk and the FAC leadership, specifically Sean House.
Let's
okay.
Not mention.
I'm just saying who the communications are between. And Ms. Tallman has always responded to Mr. House within 24 hours. This email chain shows several weeks where Mr. House does not respond to Ms. Tallman, and he apologizes for his delays. The fact is, there are no alternatives to the report that the Financial Planning Committee presented to Council back in January. The opposition would like you to use the city clerk's office as a scapegoat for their inability to identify a workable solution to the $16 million shortfall this city will experience over the next 5 years should citizens vote no. Vote yes to protect our police, fire, ambulance services. Vote yes to protect the safety and security of our great city. Vote yes to protect Ferndale's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. It is, let me just say this, it has now been 30 minutes, but I'm going to allow the 4 people that are in line to have their turn. If anyone else besides the 4 people that are standing, 5 people that are standing, we're going to need to reopen count. All right. The 4 that are standing can since you've been so patient as to stand here, I will allow that. And then I'm going to reopen call to audience after the regular agenda. So we have a relatively short agenda tonight, folks, so it shouldn't take that long. Thank you, Dawn. Good evening.
Thank you very, very much. I'll try to be brief. I'm not here to ridicule anyone and the methods that they use for whatever they believe in. But I do want to say that sacrifice to me doesn't have anything to do with a big screen TV. It has to do with having a very high deductible, high co-insurance medical plan where I have to decide which of the 3 $800 injectable medications I need to cut back on because I don't have it. That's sacrifice to my family. A year ago or so, my son was looking for a house. It was time to buy, and you know, this is where he was raised. He lived here for 26 years. All the cities in this area we looked in. And, of course, he wanted to find a house that he liked, but he needed something he could afford. And that included mortgage payment plus taxes. He couldn't afford to buy a house in Ferndale. He now lives in Madison Heights. He would have loved to have lived in Ferndale. And because they're expecting a baby, I'd love to have him here, too. But taxes were high, way too high back then. Gas. $4 a gallon. Heard Obama say something about it going to $5 a gallon by Memorial Day, and we all need to trade in our cars, and that's really funny. We can't do anything about the gas prices, but we're going to have to pay it. Double-digit water rate increases are coming. We can't do anything about that, but we are going to have to pay it. A 38% tax increase is something that we can do something about, and that is to vote no. And I urge all the citizens of Ferndale to vote no for this Headley override. And just like the rest of us, council must live within its means. You have to live within your means. No on the increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Dennis Augustin, 1550 Spencer. This past week I was watching MSNBC. We got a governor that's hoping that our cities all fail and this millage doesn't pass, because what it means is, and he's already gone out, and according to MSNBC, he's already gone out and recruited people to train them as emergency financial managers. And what they were saying on MSNBC, that a vote no would mean that you, the city government, would be stripped of some of your powers of what you can do and what you can't do, and basically you're going to be sitting up there and doing just that. Okay? Now, my taxes are pretty high. I really can't afford them. That being said, I'm still going to vote yes on May 3rd, because I still like my police, I like my fire, I like everything about the city services that are offered right here in this city. And that could be any city in the United States, really. But I happen to live here in Ferndale, and I'm going to vote yes. And after what I've seen of that half-hour special on the Rachel Maddow Show, MSNBC, with the Benton Harbor issue and Verge Pinero being on there and them talking about the emergency financial managers and that, I can't see any other way but voting yes. You know, because if you can't do business for the people of Ferndale, what's going to happen to the city then? Okay? This has gone just a little bit farther than police and fire now, with what was said on television, on national news. Okay? And that is the governor's hoping that he can strip some of your power too. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Steve Kuzmanovich, 2037 Livernois.
Welcome.
37-year retired veteran of the fire service. Some of you know that. Some of you in the audience don't. What he said, exactly. This emergency financial manager crap that's being forced on us is dangerous. Okay? I'm going to make it real brief here. Police department's been cut to the bone. Fire department's been cut to the bone. We need these people. I'm voting yes on this Headley override. We got to have it. We've got to have it. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker for our first portion of Call to Audience, Nancy Getter.
Hi. There's an old axiom that teaches that people who forget history are bound to repeat it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Ferndale's history. I sold real estate in the 80s. Once I listed a darling, well-maintained house on a street that had, most of the houses were pretty run down. And a realtor from Birmingham came to look at the house, and he looked around at the street, and he said, "This is the armpit of America." And Ferndale, at that time, was in really sad shape. The word that best would describe it would be seedy. In 1991, my son Chuck and a former police chief, Pat Sullivan, won seats on the city council. Councilman Sullivan said that the best thing to do with Ferndale's downtown was bulldoze it. Many buildings were boarded up, and there was no foot traffic at all. Chuck's build program was instituted to fix up business fronts. A downtown development authority director was hired. The downtown came alive. Throughout the city, people began to fix up their houses, one at a time. And now I see no shabby streets in Ferndale. We have fixed our sidewalks, repaved our streets, relined our sewers, passed a dedicated millage for the library, and another one to expand the library. We have supported our school millages. We have a town that Norman Rockwell would enjoy painting and living in. Because of the global economy, we're all in deep trouble now, and we have choices to make. History shows that it's expensive to let your city die. It costs in low property values. It costs in the quality of life that we value. Fast fire and ambulance services, community center, clean parks, plowed streets, safety. If this millage fails, it wouldn't save money. It would cost us a lot, and we would lose a lot. Since property taxes have gone down in the last couple of years, this millage would essentially restore them to what we paid in 2009. The millage to be voted on May 3rd should see us through the next 5 years when it will end. Hopefully, we'll be past this crisis then, and in the meantime, we will have survived in good shape. Let's not return to seedy Ferndale. Please vote yes on May 3. Vote yes for Ferndale. Thank you.
As I mentioned, I will reopen Call to Audience after the regular agenda, which I don't expect to take too long this evening, and to give anyone an opportunity who hasn't had a chance to speak to address us at that point. At this time, the next item of business is our consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council, and we enact them in one motion. I will read all three of the consent agenda items and ask for a motion. A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held April 11th, 2011, and the special meeting held April 6th and April 13th, 2011. Item B, approval to adopt a resolution proclaiming May as Mental Health Month as submitted by the city clerk. And C, approval of the bills and payrolls as certified by the city manager to be paid subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. Is there any comments or questions? Anyone would like anything pulled from the consent agenda?
I would move that we adopt the consent agenda in its entirety.
Support.
Moved by Galloway, supported by Piana. I do have to ask, is there anyone here from the Mental Health Association in regards to the resolution? We'll make sure that they get the resolution. Thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Council members Piana?
Yes.
Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon is absent from the table, and Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is passed. Now on to the regular agenda. Item A, consideration of ordinance number 1110, amending Chapter 7, Article 14, garage and yard sales of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances to eliminate the permit requirement. And Madam City Clerk, I believe you are introducing this item?
Yes, I am, Your Honor. Thank you. One of the things we start looking at as we're looking at reductions in staff is what we can do to make processes more effective and more efficient. And in speaking with our new Community and Economic Development Director, Derek Delacourt, we agreed that the reasons that the garage sale permitting process was first put in place was to avoid the habitual garage sales that become more of a business. And he and I both feel that that type of misuse of garage sales can be addressed under what we already have in place for home businesses in the zoning ordinance. Therefore, we're going to recommend that we eliminate the permitting process for garage sales. There would still be rules in place that residents can only have 2 garage sales every year for no more than 3 consecutive days each, and that's a switch from 2 days to 3 days, because I know that the social norm now is Thursday, Friday, Saturday garage sale. And like I said, we're simply eliminating the permitting requirement because in many ways it's redundant to the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Are there any questions of council?
Yeah, I have a couple. It says that the oversight or enforcement can be provided through code enforcement, but code enforcement doesn't work on the weekends. So how does...
Code enforcement is in charge of overseeing the permitting violations as well, so it's the same issue. Okay. They're not on duty on weekends. The way I see this working is the way any code nuisance works, and that is somebody calls to complain, and then we have the ability to send someone out and investigate that, and especially with our contract ordinance or code enforcement officers, who are now contract employees, not regular employees, they could flex their time and come in on the weekends to investigate those claims.
And do we receive a lot of complaints on an annual basis?
No, we do not. We receive none.
We receive none. Okay.
Other questions? Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
I'll move to adopt ordinance number 1110, amending Chapter 7, Article 14, garage and yard sales of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances to eliminate the permit requirement and extend the allowable length of sales to 3 consecutive days.
Support.
Moved by Baker, supported by Lennon. Any further comments, questions?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So if I wanted to hold a garage sale, if I ever got it together, and held a garage sale, I don't need to submit a permit to the city.
That's correct.
So I can just purchase the signs, follow the rules, and hold my garage sale independent of ever connecting with the city.
That is correct.
Okay.
And my question is, and maybe this is for the city attorney, I'm not sure, but so in order for it to fall under the jurisdiction of the code enforcement, then a garage sale would have to be classified as a home business, correct? And is the definition broad enough for that?
To the extent that there's more than
2 in a calendar year, there would be, it would be in violation of the code section, and so code enforcement could enforce, because there's a threshold number, maximum threshold
Whether it's
that's allowed.
Whether it's considered a home business or not, just by virtue of the fact
By
that it's the
virtue
second
of
one.
more than 2 in a calendar year.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So what you're saying is that code enforcement would be riding around and keeping track of those addresses, and that would really be about the only way you'd know that the person was doing maybe 1, maybe 2 a year. I mean, how can
Again,
you accurately keep track of that?
The same way we respond to most code violations, in that they are brought to attention to the city by neighbors
so
or
you're
residents.
depending on the people to say something then.
Essentially.
Essentially,
Yeah.
for garage sales.
That's right.
So even though, let me sort of clarify how it worked before. So even though we were taking permits and people were paying for them, we weren't pulling a list every year and going back and seeing how
Well,
many.
you're collecting a revenue, so why would you?
Well, I think,
Again, difficult thing to enforce, a difficult thing to track, and therefore it seems like a redundant process to ask our residents to come in and pay $5 just to pay $5.
When your neighbor's probably not paying $5 and not following the rule anyway.
Correct.
Any further questions or comments on this item? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. Regular agenda item B, consideration of a Mother's Day weekend sidewalk sale at Seasonal Corner. Who's introducing this item?
I can take care of this one, too. Police chief is here. Good. This Mother's Day weekend sale by Seasonal Corners is something that the owner requests just about every year, and every year it creates some discussion among city staff. If you can see by the site plan that the owner submitted, there's really no property outside the building that she owns. So in order to display merchandise for an outside sale, it has to be placed on either the grassy area that is right-of-way between the building and the sidewalk, or the sidewalk, which is also public property. So in either case, it requires city approval. In the past, we've had an indemnification agreement. We've had restrictions against what can be placed so that sight lines for traffic are not hindered. This year, the police chief, our new police chief, has some concerns about items being placed on the sidewalk. In the past, we've had concerns about the right-of-way, because that's where she was putting up tents and hanging plants, and drivers couldn't see. So it's back up before you again this year, hopefully for a definitive decision.
And I see the chief coming forward. He did look at this issue and has a recommendation for us. Chief?
Thank you, Your Honor. I did have some conversation with the city clerk on this matter. I feel that the main request that is concerning to me is placing things on the sidewalk. It's a standard sidewalk. Anything that is placed on the sidewalk will impede any type of use of the sidewalk, particularly for handicapped folks. In addition to that, I don't have as much problem with the right-of-way so long as it does not impact on the sight lines of traffic. If that can be accomplished between the sidewalk and the curb, just potted plants and things like that, that has no concern to me whatsoever. But many times she has put tents up over the sidewalk and onto the easement, and then hang things from it, and it did impede the vision for West Marshall Street. So long as the berm is being used or the easement is being used just on the surface, that's not a problem. But the sidewalk, I do believe there's no real way that you can utilize a sidewalk and not impede pedestrian traffic or handicap traffic.
Thank you, Chief. Is the owner, Carlotta Gardenas, is not here? No. Okay.
I have a question.
A question?
A question for the city attorney. Last year when we talked about the sidewalk sale, and we made what I thought was a pretty good compromise. One of your concerns, and we talked about it for the last 3 years now, is that selling things in the public right of way was one of the problems that you had, that there would be things offered for sale.
Well, it requires,
in that median start.
it requires approval of council to have a sidewalk sale. Last year also, my recollection is council was concerned, perhaps at the suggestion of the chief, that the sidewalk was not broad enough to permit items to be displayed, and council last year allowed for it between the street and the sidewalk in the right-of-way. Actually, I believe it was between the building and
the sidewalk.
Because the motion that I'm looking at here from last year was that the one that passed anyway, was that goods and wares were available for display and sale on sidewalks only. But we did not pass the motion that would have allowed things, unless I'm reading this wrong, that we did not pass the motion that would have allowed things between the street and the sidewalk.
You're correct.
And I think we worked out a pretty good system last year. Were there any complaints last year, or did the police officers observe sort of things out of hand and people not being able to walk through?
I'm not aware of any problems that occurred last year.
Certainly, if the motion was that it was on sidewalks only, I mean, that's council's prerogative to narrow the license to that framework. I'm not sure what the width of the sidewalk is.
Oh, I don't plan to spend an hour
Oh,
on it either,
no,
Mike.
Every year this comes
I know.
up.
Well, and that's why I sort of, that was my question, or I guess maybe my question to my colleagues is, if we haven't heard complaints, and if the police haven't yet made it a sort of a point to take a look and see if there are any violations, perhaps that's what we ask for this year. We let her do what she did last year. She signed the same indemnification documents that she did last year. If we ask the chief to, please have someone drive by, take a look, see if there are things impeding pedestrian traffic. If that's the case, then next year we know that it's just not working. It's hard when you're not in the central business district to do a sidewalk sale. Your sidewalk is, sort of regular side street sidewalk. But I haven't yet heard an official complaint or anyone who's actually gone out and said, this is impeding pedestrian traffic, we've measured, it's not legal, or it's not passable, or I guess I just want a reason before I say she can't do this.
So it would come back to us next year?
Probably. Unless we shared some information with her this year. If there was a problem and we could talk with her and say, it's probably not going to work anymore, maybe it wouldn't come back to us next year.
Well, we're still in the questions portion. If we want to discuss this,
Thanks.
it
Sorry.
would require a motion. But, so are there other questions on this resolution? I guess one question I have is, we have alternative motions we could make, and one says that we allow them to use it on the sidewalk, another says on the right-of-way. I think I'm hearing the police chief say he doesn't care about the right-of-way. It might be helpful. I know the business owner is not here, but would it be sufficient for her to be able to display goods on the right-of-way only and not the sidewalk, which is the recommendation of the police chief? And would that satisfy her? Do we know that? Has anyone who's had contact with her, do we know that would be satisfying?
If I remember correctly, her original request a couple of years ago was to use all of it. I think if you're going to allow her to use that area between the building and the sidewalk, there need to be restrictions against impeding sight lines for traffic.
There were also discussions on previous occasions, and this is where Mike's comment about, let's not make it go on for an hour again, comes from, is that there were discussions about what you can and can't put in right-of-ways. There was, at one point, we had not allowed the slow traffic signs that a group on West Maplehurst was putting together to be in the right-of-way, and then there was this request about sales and signage in the right-of-way, and if I remember correctly, the conversation last year sort of revolved around the right-of-way and protected speech, and it went off on this big tangent, which is why we stayed away from the right-of-way.
What is council's pleasure? A motion would be in order or not?
I will make a motion, but then also, as I mentioned, ask for some specific follow-up so we can make a better decision next year. I would move to approve the license agreement allowing Seasonal Corner 1011 Livernois to hold a sidewalk sale from Friday, May 6th, 2011 at 8 a.m. until Sunday, May 8th, 2011 at 7 p.m. to the extent that the applicant is allowed to display merchandise, goods, and wares on sidewalks only, and so long as the ability of pedestrians to navigate the sidewalk is preserved. I would ask that the proper department investigate whether or not that navigability is indeed preserved.
I'll second that. Moved by Baker, seconded by Lennon. Now, it would be an appropriate time for comments or other questions from council.
Well, I prefer not to have this come back to council again next year. I know Councilwoman Baker's suggestion is a compromise in trying to help this business owner display and sell her flowers outside, even though she doesn't have the appropriate space in which to do it. So we continually find compromises. In my mind, this would be my last compromise. But I think Councilwoman Baker has a point in terms of does it work or not work. I'm willing to explore that.
If it doesn't work, then we'll know next year, and we'll be able to let Carlotta know it doesn't work.
And maybe it can be done administratively, so it won't even come to council. So
I don't know that it can be done administratively. It requires council approval
okay.
for.
Well, maybe it won't even be submitted.
Oh, fair enough.
And I guess for myself, I mean, the motion says we'll allow her to do it on the sidewalk as long as that doesn't impede the ability of pedestrians to navigate the sidewalk, which our police chief is telling us he believes it does. And there's probably not a way to get around that if there's things in the sidewalk. I guess I'm hearing the chief say that it does. So I guess I'm more inclined to allow her to use the right-of-way as long as it doesn't impede the line of sight, as the chief has said, as opposed to the sidewalk. And I suppose this is I'm assuming this is a safety issue. If the sidewalk is blocked, people walk in the street, then they get hit. So the indemnification is one thing, but I don't want people to get hit by walking in the sidewalk. So, I mean, in the street. So I see people rising to this issue. So, Katie, I will allow you to speak.
I just want to say that I agree with you, Mayor, that I do not believe she should have anything on the sidewalk. That needs to be for pedestrian traffic. But if you allow her for those 2 days to use the right-of-way on Livernois with a height not to exceed whatever the police chief feels is appropriate, whether that's 3 feet or 4 feet, so that she couldn't put a tent up, nothing to go above. So she could put, stands up and maybe put plants up to 3 foot tall, and display more by doing it that way. And then make it a standard for that one weekend, for that one business. And then it might not come back to council again in the future. But I also think there needs to be a height restriction if you allow her to use the right-of-way. Because I agree, traffic needs to be able to see if somebody's going to dart across the street, especially a child or a dog.
Thank you. Mayor Porter, I'm guessing you've debated this issue once or twice, maybe.
That goes back a long time. Carla ran that for many years before it was even questioned. Okay. And to be very honest with you, I agree with what you're saying, because the sidewalk does impede traffic. The right-of-way area there actually does extend out a little bit. It's fairly wide compared to the standard right-of-way in front of somebody's home. As long as there's a restriction, when you get right up to the corner, the only problem they had was at one time she had a couple of large items right up by the corner, and your ability to see oncoming traffic at the intersection, even though there's a light, was considered to be somewhat dangerous in that respect. So as long as there's some limitation to how far down things are that can block vision of the oncoming cars down Marshall in that particular case, I think it's much more appropriate if you have somebody that's handicapped or whatever the case may be, trying to go down the street and the sidewalk's blocked, if the ground's a little wet, they're in trouble. So I think that's more appropriate, to be honest.
Thank you.
Well, I have one more question.
Yes, Councilwoman.
If we allow it into the right-of-way, doesn't that kind of cancel out all of the former decisions about why we didn't allow her to have it in the right-of-way in the beginning?
Good, you're making an exception. That's the license agreement is allowing the exception to the normal rule, which would be that you're not allowed to place it.
So, right. and former decisions made by council was says no to the right-of-way. So that's.
I'm not sure, not having been on council, I'm not sure why the decision was made not to allow it on, other than the line of sight, which I agree with the chief. I think we could amend that to restrict how high something in the right-of-way is. But I'm not privy to the history, the right-of-way history.
Well, I think the important point is our shared interest is making sure she can have her sidewalk sale and that she can sell her businesses or her wares outside. It's just, where do we draw the line in terms of allowing one business to do it and not allowing another business to do it?
So
that is the.
So are you arguing for or against the right-of-way exception as well?
You know.
All right. Because for me, the overriding issue is public safety, and it's I want her to succeed as a businesswoman, but it's not my overriding issue to make sure she has a sidewalk sale. It's to make sure that the public is safe and can use the sidewalks and not walk into the street and get hurt. So I find the chief's comments on that persuasive. I'm open to the right-of-ways if that makes it easier for her, but if that if that impedes something the council has, done in the past, I'm open to that as well.
Well, I share the same interest in terms of making sure that there's safety and cleared sidewalks, complete streets. But since all those decisions have in the past been said no to the right-of-way, here we are. So, there is a motion on the table.
There is a motion on the table. Moved by Baker, supported by Lennon. Are we ready to vote? Any other comments or questions? Are we ready to vote on this motion?
What's the motion? Is it the first or the second proposal?
The first one.
Sidewalks only.
As long as it doesn't impede the ability of pedestrians.
Well, is that, that seems to me to be actually the more, that she'll be able to put less stuff out, which is, again, fine by me. She puts stuff out there all the time, right? She has her little things to put on grave sites and little crosses and wreaths and stuff. She puts them right up against the building, and I don't see any problem with that. But, I think what she has in mind is the Fresh Approach over on Campbell and Lincoln, which has a big tent or something that goes over the sidewalk. There's tons of stuff on either side. That's what she's always referenced. And to me, that's a huge problem. So, I don't know. This is about the sixth time we've talked about this up here. I've always been on the most restrictive side on the votes. And I guess I see the sidewalks only as more restrictive than rights of way. She'll be able to put less stuff out there because a wheelchair has to have, 3 feet? What's ADA for moving around? 4 feet?
It's 4.
So she's got to say, is it a 4-foot or a 5-foot sidewalk?
It's about as wide as our sidewalks.
All right, so she'll be able to smash something up against the building there, and if it gets out of the way, and then that's a problem. I don't know. I think she can still conduct her business and display a couple things out there and still be okay. But I think she's got a doorway, doesn't she, on that side that she can sort of tuck the stuff into?
And there's a space between 2 buildings that she utilizes for her tents and barbecues.
Yeah. I think she can comply with sidewalks only, and we just need to take a look at it and make sure she has 1 or 2 things out there. And if she goes hog wild, like Fresh Approach at Campbell and Lincoln, then she's in violation of what we said. It's a great location, but there's some downsides to it, and this is one of them. My 2 bits.
Further discussion. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Piana,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Galloway,
Yes.
Lennon,
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
No. So that item passes. Thank you very much. And that concludes our regular agenda, which, as promised, leads us back to call to audience. I'm going to reopen call to audience for as long as it takes, and I am going to give priority to those residents who have not spoken first. So if you have not spoken yet this evening, please step forward, and if there are none of those, the rest of you are also welcome to come up. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Alan Solvay. I live at 1120 East 9 Mile Road. I have a little note from a former resident. His name is Jay Arnold. He says, I wish I could be there tonight. However, with a sick 9-month-old baby, I can't get away tonight. However, please use my email as an example to share with everyone. I have been sending your Facebook page around to people I know in Ferndale to try to get them to join and help vote no on May 3rd. Now, he states, this is what he said, the taxes in Ferndale are out of line with reality. I would love to help in any way possible, however, we can't vote as we moved. We lived in Ferndale from 99 to 09 and moved to Rochester Hills as our family has outgrown our home. We tried selling our home from 06 to 09 with no luck. So we became landlords. However, we just received a notice from our bank that our escrow is way out of balance. Simple reason, taxes went up. Our escrow amount is nearly $900 short. We now pay over $3,100 in property taxes a year in Ferndale. We pay much less than that in Rochester Hills. Granted, it is a homestead versus non-homestead. For a house that is valued for $25,000, this is beyond a simple miscalculation. That's what Jay Arnold said. I also like to express that our neighbors in Detroit have a much worse problem, and their approach to solving budget problem is not to raise taxes right off the bat. They are taking serious cuts. I wish perhaps the city of Ferndale would use the same approach and then reapproach this taxes issue. If anybody's, again, on the fence with this issue, please vote no. We can look at this later on in November. So I thank you for giving me the time. And one other issue, I know you were talking about sidewalks, and I do go downtown occasionally, and I ride a bike because I have a bad knee and I don't walk very much. I have the courtesy of walking my bike on a sidewalk downtown, but I notice a lot of bicyclers don't. They ride their bike on a sidewalk. It does create problems. I'm wondering if you could address this, maybe put a sign, have people not to ride their bikes on the sidewalk in the downtown district, because it could be a dangerous type of thing for someone coming out of a store and somebody riding their bike on a sidewalk.
Well, there were signs up. I don't know if there's still. There's always been signs up there. Not no more?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll look into it. Thank you. No,
Thank
good
you.
suggestion. Thank you, Alan. Thanks. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Moore. I'm a Ferndale police officer, and I'm the president of the Ferndale Police Officers Association. I came here this evening to speak on behalf of the vote on May 3rd that our union stance is that a yes vote is a vote for the city of Ferndale. We want to keep our staffing level the way it is. We don't want to drop any more than we already have. It's already been shown that if the money, as you folks say, the money isn't there, that you will lay officers off, and that has been done. We don't want to go through that again. So our recommendation is to vote yes. We just settled, or in the final stages of settling our contract with the city, which I won't get into that, but part of the reason for us doing that at this time is to show the citizens of Ferndale that we are concerned, and we realize that there is a problem with the economy, and Ferndale in particular, and that we're trying to do our part also. But even with the cuts that could come through and the concessions that will come through with the new contract, if this doesn't pass on May 3rd, my personal belief is that there will be layoffs. Obviously, I don't sit on city council, but from what I've seen and what I've experienced, I believe that there will be layoffs in the police department and probably the fire department. So on behalf of both departments, public safety in general, we would ask that citizens of the city of Ferndale vote yes. And I'm not trying to use it as a scare tactic, but just that we've already been through this last year. We've been in contract negotiations for 2 years. And last year we had a lot of officers laid off, and we just don't want that to happen again. So again, not to be repetitive, but we would ask that you vote, the citizens of Ferndale vote yes for the upcoming vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, sir, Mayor Porter.
Good evening, Bob Porter, 855 Marshfield, Ferndale. First of all, I'd like to thank personally the police department. They've made sacrifices because they understand exactly what the situation is we have. Nancy Getter pretty much touched on where I was going, because as you know, my time getting involved in this community was in the early and mid-90s. At that point in time, people talk about our tax base today. We did things to try and save. We had a community center. It was right next door. It was closed. And as a result of that, property values were continuing to go down. Downtown was becoming 50, 60% vacant. Nothing was going well in the community. And at that time, you couldn't even raise taxes because we were already paying 19.5 mills. But we studied this from a fiscal point of view and our infrastructure, and we came back to the people and we talked about, let's fix the infrastructure in our community. Let's reinvest. And there was a chance of that being another 11 and 12 mills, potentially, depending on bond sales, over the 19 mills they were paying. Nobody was happy about that idea, but they said, this is the time. We've got to do something for our community. As Nancy referred to it as kind of a creepy Ferndale day. And they did, and we invested. And what did we get for that investment? We got a community center back. We got our police and fire back to the strengths they were at before. Property values over a 10-year period of time were the fastest growing in Oakland County. That's unheard of for old inner ring suburbs like Ferndale. But like any business, like Jack that was here today, who invests millions of dollars, and he is now the largest salsa dealer in the United States, the city has to operate like a business. We can't make cuts. Somebody requested tonight, well, let's close the library. The library isn't paid for out of the city budget. There's a lot of things that people look at and they don't understand, that they think we can just simply lop off. That's not the case. Reality is, I think as Brendan Morris mentioned, if the money's not there, we lose more police officers, we lose more firefighters, and we jeopardize the value of our community. We have a choice next Tuesday. We can kind of take the Chrysler GM route, but for us, that's a financial manager. Or we can kind of take the third major automaker's route, Ford, and we can reinvest in ourselves and come out as a rising star. Vote yes next Tuesday. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm not going to speak about taxes. I'm Jerry Oley. I'm the secretary of the Ferndale Elks Lodge, and I'm here to talk to Mayor Coulter and the council and everybody else and tell them about some of the people we honored this last Thursday. It was our annual Law and Order night, and we were proud to have honored our Citizen of the Year, Jacqueline Smith, and she was presented by Melanie Piana. Melanie Piana, Councilwoman. Senior Citizen of the Year was Katie Hirschberger, and she was presented her award by Jeannie Davis. Our Firefighters of the Year were Stephen Light, and Firefighter of the Year, Miles Brackley. Of course, they couldn't make it that night, but I'm going to try to get their picture tomorrow. What do you think of that, Chief? If you want to be at the fire station down here tomorrow morning, how about 9:30? You're eating.
Could you guys arrange that? Yeah.
He's over to the ambulance.
Thank you, Chair.
Anyway, City Worker of the Year was Cecil Thompson presented. Presenter was who was the presenter? Who was it? Oh, Jane Marie. Oh, Jane Marie Eubanks. Okay. Police Officer of the Year, Matthew Goebel, presented by Chief Collins, and he made a nice, told us all about his fine work. DPW Worker of the Year, we already know who he was, Terry Murphy, driving around with his truck with a big sign on it. And of course, Dan Harper was his presenter. We're so proud to honor the people that serve Ferndale, and it's a great pleasure doing this. We do it once a year, and I have one other item, and I'm hoping our Honorable Mayor will do a proclamation for me. Whereas the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks has designated the first week of May as Youth Week to honor America's junior citizens for their accomplishments and to give fitting recognition to their services to the community, state, and nation. And whereas Ferndale Elks Lodge 1588 will sponsor an observance during that week in tribute to the junior citizens of this community And whereas no event could be more deserving of our support and participation than one dedicated to these young people who represent the nation's greatest resource and who in the years ahead will assume the responsibility for the advancement of our free society. And whereas to achieve this worthy objective, we should demonstrate our partnership with youth in understanding of their hopes and aspirations and a sincere willingness to help prepare them in every way for their responsibilities and opportunities of citizenship. Now, therefore, I, Dave Calder, Mayor of Ferndale, Michigan, do hereby proclaim the first week in May as Youth Week and urge all departments of government, civic, fraternal, and patriotic groups, and our citizens generally to participate wholeheartedly in its observance. I'll leave this.
Jerry, I'm happy to do that, and I'd ask the unanimous consent of my colleagues up here. We'll do it this evening since our next meeting won't be until after the first meeting.
Yeah.
Any objections to unanimous? Thank you very much, Jerry. That was well said. Thank you.
And I'll even bring this up at the Youth Assistance Meeting on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Katie?
Here I am again, Katie Hirschberger, 750 West Maplehurst, and I am here to support the ballot on Tuesday. I was honored when this council asked me to participate on the Financial Planning Committee. I feel very strongly about the city that I've lived in for the last 35 years and lived close to for well over 50 years. I know back, the city was established in 1927. I believe in 1929 there was this thing called the Great Depression. I remember the very tail end of it. I remember as a child hearing the stories of how my family had to scrape in order to survive. And maybe that's what we need to do now in Ferndale. We're having our own form of a depression, not because of anything that we in the city have done, but because of the economic circumstances that are being superimposed upon us. We don't want to see the fire or the police department cut. We want to see them at as full strength as possible. But we know that cuts need to come from somewhere, and we know that money needs to come from somewhere. Both together have to come together to make the city continue to be the strong and special community that it is. When we think of not having the millage pass, we start thinking of Governor Snyder and his financial planners, or whatever they want to call them. If you just look at the Detroit School Board, you'll know what a disaster that can be, and it can be a greater disaster for a city. We just need to have the support of the community in order to continue to be the strong city that we have been. I think everybody else in this city, like myself, has enjoyed living here, have enjoyed the services, the community, the sense, the feel that when you walk down the street, you can say hi to people. You see people on the streets every day, even in the communities, not only the downtown. We need to keep it. The only way we can keep it is self-sacrifice. If you're not going to sacrifice here, you're going to sacrifice someplace else, because all of this is going to hit everywhere. Please vote yes and be supportive of your city that you appreciate and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Pat.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Patrick Sheehan, Ferndale Firefighters Association, Local 812. Just kind of a message to both Mayor, Council, and the citizens. You know, we've heard what you guys have said are the results of voting no on the Headley override. We've all been told what that's going to mean. You know, our police and fire chiefs have both let you know what the end results are going to be from their end. There's going to be some drastic changes. For us, you know, I can speak for fire. It's going to be serious manpower reductions and daily shift manning. There's been talk of Station 2 is going to potentially be closed. We're going to probably drop out of an Oakway Pact, which has been around forever, and it's probably the best manpower resource that we have in any event of the big one. It's going to put our auto aid agreements in jeopardy, which again is a tool for us to try and provide the best staffing possible. It's going to probably kill all consolidation talks, which are actively going on, and you guys have made a serious effort to try and make this continue on. and we're going to lose our ambulance service, and that's huge. The ambulance is not only great for everybody in the event somebody is injured, but it helps in funding to keep manpower at a best level possible. I have worked alongside mayor and council, our city manager, and our financial planning committee during this whole process, and the end result is that when it's all said and done, our city is in better shape than most other cities around us. That does not mean that we are in great shape. That means that we're not at the bottom of the bucket. So we still have a chance to not go down to the bottom. And I think that this Headley override is a way to help us continue our course that we're on. The reason why we're not at the bottom is because our mayor, council, city managers, financial directors, and the fire unions and police and everyone else have made changes and tried to do things to help the city survive. We've taken on 2 other cities' fire protection. We generate revenue with that. Unfortunately, it does take manpower to do it. We're in a tough spot. We understand that if we tell everybody that you need to vote, people are going to say that, of course you say that, but the reality is we're leaking oil. We've proven that we're leaking oil. We're proving that things are running thin. And ultimately, we just do not want to go down this road. On behalf of the fire union, I just want to let everybody know that we support the Headley override, and we're encouraging everybody to vote yes on May 3rd. And we know what the end result is going to be if we don't do that. And also I would say to the citizens that your mayor and council have also said what they want to do with the Headley override money. So it's up to them to police that if they're worried about it and make sure that that's where the emphasis is. And I think everybody probably by now believes that I'll police it. So
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Pat. Anyone else? Dennis, good evening.
I had to wait till the end. My name's Dennis Whitey, 1491 Spencer, co-chair of the Yes to Ferndale's Future campaign. Up here basically giving my one last push in the public forum, face-to-face with the council, the public, and as well as the cameras. Basically, a couple of things that were stated tonight absolutely have to be addressed. And the first thing is that we could just wait till November. If you're sitting on the fence, we could wait it out, vote no, and then vote yes later. The problem with that is our budget years work from July 1 through June 30th. As of July 1 of this year, that's 2 months away. That's when you'll start seeing the cuts. That's when you'll start seeing Fire Station 2 on the east side having to close. That's when you'll see less police within our police department, not in the streets. So waiting till November is basically, it's an unrealistic option. If you vote no in May, you're voting no for good pretty much. You vote in November, it's going to take you at a whole nother budget year, and then you're going to try to dig yourself out of a hole as opposed to taking the proactive approach, and thereby possibly putting us right down that list that we've been talking about with the governor's office with those financial managers. The other issue that was brought up tonight was the 38% alleged tax increase from what they've said. It's not 38%, it's 11% overall of your dollars when you have the 5.45 mils. 38% keeps coming up. There's 3 people who had stated that. However, I would just ask people, please watch the forum that has just occurred this past Saturday. It will be on cable. It will be on all the websites, including ours, yesferndale.com. And in that, our opponents, the no vote, has actually admitted that it is only, in fact, an 11% increase. I'm disappointed they've come back here tonight to say 38% over and over again. And I'm disappointed that some of the literature out there states 38%, and they haven't basically retracted that statement. So it is 11%, and actually both sides agree on that. Just watch the tape. In addition to all of that, one speaker talked about insurance ratings suffering due to Fire Station number 2 closing, and I just say, yes, this is a money issue, obviously, but it's so much more than that. Fire Station 2 closing won't just, even if the rates did stay the same, what are the actual costs to you and your family? I myself am an East Side resident. My whole family, my sisters, nieces, nephews, mom, dad, everybody's on the East Side, and that will have a disproportionate impact on the East Side, as well as the entire city of Ferndale. You're going to have less firemen to attack these fires. The fire chief did an excellent job at the budget meeting, which I was very disappointed that a lot of our, actually none of our no campaigners actually showed up to listen to the man, but he has told you we will not be able to do interior attacks. It'll basically be trying to save the neighbor's property and the fire from spreading. So this will have a huge impact on the entire city. One thing I did also want to bring up is thank our police department and our fire department for coming out in support, as you saw tonight, and also thank our police department. They did take some concessions there. I know it was a hard bullet to bite. Police officer myself, I know how difficult that is, and we greatly appreciate them kicking in once again to assist and protect Ferndale, not only on the street but financially. Also, I want to also thank our wrap it up now. I want to thank our fire department as well for their support up here. They've really come out in the last couple of weeks. I've been talking with them as well, and I'm very happy to have their support in this. The last thing is you've heard no alternatives proposed to the Citizens Financial Planning Committee. Nothing that can be implemented. We saw no 40-page document from the other side. There is no other way. Nobody's presented you the other way. Nobody's presented to the residents any other way. So please, the way to preserve our future is to say yes to Ferndale's future on May 3rd. And I encourage a yes vote on that date. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't see anyone else for call to audience. Does that conclude call to audience? I suppose it does. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us all evening and sharing your thoughts on these and other issues. Next item of business is council liaison reports. I won't go through these. Are there any liaison committees that to be reported on this evening? Then our next order of business is call to council. And I'll start with the chief. Chief, anything further to add this evening?
Evening, Mayor. I have nothing of, I don't want to talk about taxes or anything, but I do want to talk a little bit about money. As I proposed or presented last council meeting, Sergeant Brown and the union has got together with the Loving Touch for this bicycle, the pool tournament. We've had some enormous successes with that. Several of the businesses in the community have already donated substantial money. Hank Kinsey and Associates, the Edge Midford, and McDonald's, I believe, is making a donation. And this is going to be on May 1st from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. $15 to participate in the tournament itself. There'll be door prizes, there'll be 50-50 raffles, and the end goal is to supply bicycles for at least 10 youths that have been the victim of a bicycle theft in the past year, where they cannot afford to replace that bicycle. So that's the goal. I thought Sergeant Brown did an outstanding job. He's got the unions involved. He's begging people to participate, so that was a great thing. And speaking of fundraisers, there's two more that I want to tell everybody about. One is there is the Eagles Nest golf outing, which supports the football program at Ferndale High School. It is a golf outing on May 25th. It's a Wednesday. Anybody that would like to participate in that or to sponsor a hole, they can contact me or they can contact Officer Thibodeau. That information will be on the school district's website and on their fan outs. And lastly, the internet newspapers are doing a couple of stories on our annual fundraiser for the athletic department with MUPU, and that's basically as we take the football field and we divide it into 1,500 2-yard by 2-yard plots, and you can buy a deed for each one of those plots. And then in June, we're going to put a cow on the football field. This is where the moo part comes in. And then if the cow defecates in your little spot, that's where the poo part comes in. You win $1,000. So it's a great fundraiser. We do it every year. It sends a lot of kids to camp, and this time we're partnering with a bunch of the different sporting teams at the high school, and it's actually kind of fun, and the kids get to fund a lot of their camp for free. So those are the three. What's that?
When is that?
That will be on, in case anybody's interested in buying them, I actually have them issued. We actually issue deeds to your plot. And it'll be on June 11th is when the event actually occurs. So it's $10 for a move plot, and so it's a $10 investment where you can win up to the first prize is $1,000, the second prize is $500, and then the third prize is $250. And if the cow doesn't go to the bathroom, then we have a raffle, and we raffle off the same prizes. So we guarantee the prizes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Interesting report tonight. Chief Sullivan, anything from the police department? The fire department, excuse me.
Speaking as a paramedic, laxatives will help the cow. Past that, still looking for members for our Ferndale CERT, and that's at Ferndale CERT at ferndalefirerescue.org. I got up to 4 people now, and I'm going to shoot for 10, and then we're going to start training everybody. So there's 6 more willing people out there. We'll get the ball rolling. And I think once we get it going, it'll spread. And at this time, regardless of what happens with votes and that, we're still going to need help out there when big storms and that come in, and that just makes our community all that safer. So look forward to anybody willing. Come out and email me or call us at the station, and we'll put you on our list and get you to the first meeting coming up probably sometime in the summertime and start getting everybody together and trained. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Let's see. I'm looking to see who else is with us here this evening. I guess I don't see any of our other department heads, so we'll go to our city clerk, Sherilyn.
Okay, as you may have heard, a week from tomorrow, we're having an election. My office is concerned merely from the administration side of administering the election. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. on May 3rd for residents to vote yes or no on the proposed Headley override. I want to say we have passionate voters on both sides of this issue, and that's just one of the many things that makes Ferndale a great place to live. But I do want to remind everyone that state law does not allow campaigning within 100 feet of polling places, and they interpret that to include discussion of the issues in the polls. I've asked my election workers to keep an eye out for this, and I would just ask our residents to all behave with courtesy and respect to one another, and to just keep your discussions of the issues outside of the polling place. Also, want to make sure you know that if you're unable to physically go to the polls, or you are 60 years of age or older, you may vote by absentee ballot up until 4 p.m. on Monday, May 2nd. Just please contact my office, and we'll help you get your absentee ballot if you'd like one. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
And look forward to another well-run election, I'm sure. Thanks. City Manager.
Only thing I have, just a reminder for council and for the public, there is an open house as part of the Woodward 5 program, which will be our share here in Ferndale is going to be at the library from 12 to 4. There'll be staff people available, realtors available with the sites, homes that are open or that they could visit, along with price information. We appreciate the library doing that. Schools are participating in it as well. So another thing to add to your calendar for the first day of May.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. Dan Chris. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
My first thing is I've actually got a question for the City Manager, following up on a conversation that was had at the last council meeting, and then a conversation that I had with the DPW director. I wonder, could you let us know a little bit about what happened with the gentleman on University Street and his water line repair?
Certainly. I can answer it now.
Yeah, please do. I heard that it was resolved satisfactorily, so
Yes, we went and looked at it the next day. Both he and his wife were appreciative and were surprised, I think, that Byron and I and someone else showed up from our DPW department. We agreed to, we sent a company that we know to, or that we've used in the past to do the TV of the line. We know where there were 2 breaks, and we're under the part of the street. He agreed to, our policy requires that the house lead from your house to the main be paid by the homeowner. We agreed that we would fix the street where we have to dig it up, and we secured the price of a vendor that we particularly use that saved him about 2/3 of the cost of doing it. He was in agreement to do that and very appreciative of doing it. I think the work was authorized almost right away, and I'm not sure if it's occurred yet, but we'll do the repair of the street under our miscellaneous concrete repair program.
It's just sort of an immediate resolution to a question, and I feel like we don't always get the chance to give those up here. We get some questions that either at call to audience, we choose not to have a dialogue at call to audience, or you can't answer on the spot questions like, how do I deal with my water main break under the street? So just wanted to report back out to the community that it was immediately dealt with, and it seems like we actually got the guy a better price on fixing the line under the street. So I was really pleased to hear that from our DPW director on Wednesday. I guess the crux of the issue with the millage next Tuesday for me is thinking back, as Nancy Geddert said, to the community in which I grew up and the changes that I've seen over my lifetime here in Ferndale. And I feel like we are really at a great place in Ferndale. We're really sort of at a peak. And by that, I don't mean a peak in housing values. Mine has gone down like everyone else has. But a peak of excitement, enthusiasm, good feeling. It feels good to live in Ferndale. People want to move into Ferndale. Our streets look great. Our houses look great. People have invested in their homes. We've all invested in our community. Our downtown is sparkling. New businesses are opening. Melanie and I were at the most hilarious new business opening ever this weekend, I think. And it just seems to me that we either need to help out and pay some now, or we're all going to pay a lot more later. And we're going to pay in not only lost safety, but lost quality of life. If you think your property value has declined now, wait until we stop mowing the park across from your house. Then you tell me what your property value looks like. I work in Detroit. To have someone suggest that we should cut services to the bone like they have in Detroit, I was shocked to hear that suggestion, that somehow that should be held up as a model after which we should follow. It just seems to me to be so much more effective to maintain the services that we have than to try and rebuild after we cut to the bone. Trying to cut your way to prosperity just isn't possible. We're trying to effectively give a little and get a little. We've had our employees give up so much in the last few years, including, in over 24 cases, their jobs. And we've changed how we do business here in the city of Ferndale. It's to the point that we're going to be asking another 24 people to give up their jobs if this doesn't pass. Looking at our general fund balance, people think that there's some huge pot of money that we're all sitting on, and that we should just use that rainy day fund. And if you look at page 3 of our budget, it's online, it's right here in front of me. Yes, we do have an unreserved general fund balance. We've managed it very well. It's allowed us to keep our bond rating at a AAA level. That's kept us off of the emergency financial manager watch lists. If we don't pass this millage, we blow through this emergency rainy day fund in a year. It's gone. We are in the red by 2013. Nothing left in the general fund unreserved balance. There is not a huge pot of money that's going to sustain us for years and years to come. It doesn't exist. That, for me, is just as important as any of the other arguments that people have put out. Our ability to govern and sustain ourselves is something we all need to work at together, which is why I'm voting to raise my own property taxes. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Lennon.
Well, I won't be redundant. What's been said about the tax. I'm in support of it, obviously. But I want to thank everybody that come out and spoke, whether for it or against it. It shows you care about the city, and pro or con. I appreciate that. I like to hear other people's opinions, and their voices are certainly being heard. But please, whatever you do, just go vote. Please go vote. Let's show the other communities we do care. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Galloway.
Well,
before I get to the election next week, Saturday, May 7th is Free Comic Book Day here in Ferndale. And Detroit Comics at 23333 Woodward Avenue is the host of Free Comic Book Day. They've got face painting for the kids. A number of comic book artists and writers are going to be there. And I think you get a free comic book on Free Comic Book Day. So it runs from 11 to 8. They've got comic books for kids of all ages, whether you're a 40-year-old or a pre-reader, as Brian tells me. They've got comic books to satisfy every interest. So take advantage of that. Detroit Comics is a great independent store that we really value here in Ferndale. Ferndale, I think, is a great city, not just because of our independent stores and businesses, but also because of the people, and perhaps principally because of the people, both who work for the city and who live here. And I think it's a commitment to community, to each other, a willingness to invest in ourselves to make things better for our future, for our kids. And as long as I've lived here, as long as I've gone to school here, that's what Ferndale has always stepped up and done. We're at a point in Ferndale where, due to circumstances beyond our control, crashing property values, the city brings in a lot less money now than it did just a few years ago. Yet, through cuts in ways that are really almost invisible to most citizens, we've been able to keep up the high level of services that people have come to expect in Ferndale. Excellent response times from our police and fire department. Advanced life support services, whereas other departments contract that out to private entities. We've got a wonderful array of concept teams that people don't even appreciate are there in the police department. We've got a SWAT team. We've got ties into the DEA and Narcotics Enforcement Task Force. We've got mutual aid packs that allow us to really deliver a lot more firefighters to a scene than we otherwise could, if we were just on our own. And what people don't realize is that's a big reason why we're able to deliver the high level of services that we have here, is that we get help from our neighbors. The problem is if we don't pass this tax increase, then we're going to lose some of those assistance, some of those mutual aid, some of those concept teams, and we're going to have a lot less service. It's not going to be marginal, it's going to be dramatic. So when there was a fire on Livernois, it wasn't just Ferndale Fire Department responding. We all saw the Hazel Park truck roll over that way. When we have a problem with narcotics or something on the south end of town, it's not just the Ferndale Police Department, it's county, it's assets from all over the county that respond to it, giving us capabilities we otherwise don't have. That's what's in jeopardy if we don't agree to pass the Headley override. And I went onto the website. It's on the first page of the Ferndale website. You can go in and search what the impact is going to be for you. I did it for myself, and I found that I'm going to end up paying 55 cents more a day. For 55 cents more a day, that's about $3 and something. That means I have to skip going to Java Hut one day a week for a latte. And in return, I get response times from my fire department of 90 seconds in some instances. I get one of the best police forces we've ever seen. We get our streets plowed, our trash picked up great, and while not all of those things come out of general fund, it all works together to make Ferndale a great spot. So check out what it means to you, but don't believe the hype. The tax increase is real. It's going to go up, but it's not going to go up dramatically. And what you get in return, I think, more than offsets what you're going to pay for. So get out there on May 3rd and consider seriously, what you moved to Ferndale for in the first place.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Piana.
Yes. I just wanted to let everybody know that we are in the middle of our city manager search, and that the ad has been released on the Michigan Municipal League's website, who is our contracting firm to help do the executive search. And people may not know, but we have planned to interview city manager candidates the weekend of June 10th and 11th. And we are having a very different process than before in terms of city manager and hiring. And that will have that we have planned for department heads interviewing the candidate, that there will be a public reception on Friday night in which people can come and interview and meet the candidates, and then on Saturday there will be a interview with City Council, as well as the candidates will be presenting. I don't remember what they're presenting on, but they will be presenting so that council and the residents can understand the presentation style and how the individual candidates communicate. So I wanted to let everybody know that's what's going on. I have no idea how many people have submitted anything. I suspect that will be a lot because of many inquiries about Ferndale, because Ferndale is a pretty cool city in which other city managers want to work. So that might be different if the millage doesn't pass. So going into that segue, I just wanted to sort of do the jazz hands of I'm on support, and jazz hands means that I agree with the millage. It's a work thing. Jazz hands, I don't know. Just wanted to let you know that that's
somewhere
what we
different
do.
than where I work.
I know. But why I'm supporting the millage, and I'm supporting the millage not just for this fiscal year. This is about long-term fiscal health for the community. Though we have a $2.3 million budget shortfall for this year, we have more shortfalls for the following year and then the following year, and I think it's a $16 million shortfall over a 5-year period. So this village is about shoring up, regaining our balance, avoiding the bottom of the bucket, as was said tonight. And so this is why I support it, for all the reasons that have been stated up at council. I won't go all into them, but this is about us sustaining and regaining balance, if you wanted to call it that way, in terms of running our government, our local government. And I also wanted to say some things that I've heard tonight is that the city has spent exorbitantly on a lot of things. And I disagree. We have been taking cuts and doing cuts for the last 5 years. In some cases, our departments are cut to the bone. And that lack of a millage increase means that we won't have parts of the bone, if you wanted to say. We're cutting them off too. And so that is why I am supporting the millage, even though it means that my taxes go up as well.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I guess I will take the last word, which is simply this. I've been the mayor for 3 months now, and the primary thing that I've focused on in that time, I focused on a lot of things, but the primary thing has been the finances. I probably should have signed up for the Citizens Finance Committee because I could have got all that out of the way before January. But I came to the same conclusion that they did, unanimously, I might add, everyone on that committee, and they didn't all start of one mind, but they all eventually came to a unanimous conclusion. And it's the same conclusion that I've come to after listening to budget presentations every Wednesday night now for the last month and a half, and by studying the budget for the last 3 months. The predicament that we're in is not a result of wasteful spending. It is a result of a housing crash that has dramatically decreased our revenues, which primarily come from property taxes. And if we want the kind of services that we've had in the past or similar, then May 3rd is a very important and, I think, defining day for our city. There's a lot of disagreement between the two sides, but I think at the end of the day, they both agree on what's at stake. It's just that the No people want us to cut the city to the bare bones. And personally, I think that residents have come to expect a high level of quality service in Ferndale. And I believe that it was incumbent upon this council. I wasn't on the council when they put it on the ballot, but I would have, because I think that is such an important question that defines the character of this community. And it's up to the citizens next Tuesday to decide, do you want to continue to live in a city that has a relatively high level of quality services, or do you want us to cut it to the bone? Because that's what we will begin to do on May the 4th. And that's not a threat, and I've tried not to make it sound like that, but I've sat here every Wednesday evening for the last month and a half, and I have listened to sobering comments from our department heads, and in particular the police and fire. The cuts that they would have to make if indeed the millage doesn't pass next Tuesday are dramatic. They're significant. They will significantly alter the way Ferndale operates. And that's a question that the residents will have to ask themselves next Tuesday. And And I respect whatever decision that the residents make, and we will get to work on May 4th on implementing whatever budget you tell us to implement. But I'm voting in support of the millage because for 20 years I have loved living in a city that has outstanding service, and I'd like to see that preserved in the future. And so that's what I'm doing, and that's what I encourage folks to do. Thank you very much, and this meeting is adjourned.